Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about some notes we've got from the Triple Highs Control Guide.
Right, that big guide covering high blood pressure, sugar, and cholesterol.
Exactly. And we're really focusing today on blood sugar, specifically when it goes off the normal track.
Yeah, our goal here is pretty straightforward. We want to quickly break down the two main ways blood sugar can be abnormal. Too high, which is hyperglycemia, and too low, hypoglycemia.
And we'll cover the signs, right? What should you actually look out for?
Absolutely, the key warning signs for both. And then, importantly, we'll talk about the main tool doctors use to see how things are going over the long haul, not just day to day.
Okay, and it's probably worth saying up front, the source material is really clear on this. If your blood sugar isn't in the normal range, you need to pay attention.
Definitely. Leaving it alone. Well, those little symptoms you might barely notice, they can turn into much bigger health problems down the line. Problems you can often prevent if you know what's happening.
So let's lay out the two main issues then. Blood sugar too high, that's hyperglycemia, and blood sugar too low, hypoglycemia. Let's start with the high side, hyperglycemia. That's usually linked with diabetes, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Hyperglycemia is really the hallmark of diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding the main types, type 1 and type 2, helps explain why sugar builds up.
Okay.
So with type 1 diabetes, the body basically just stops making enough insulin. It's like you don't have the key to let sugar into your cells.
Right, the insulin is the key. And type 2, that's the more common one, I believe.
Much more common, yes. In type 2, your body is making insulin, sometimes even extra insulin, but the cells, they don't respond properly. They sort of resist the insulin signal.
So the key is there, but the lock is jammed, maybe.
That's a great way to put it. Either way, no key or jammed lock, the result's the same. Sugar can't get out of the bloodstream easily and into the cells where it's needed for energy.
So it just builds up in the blood.
Exactly. It's like a big traffic jam on the highway. The glucose, that's the cars can't get off the exits and into the city, which represents your cells. And that buildup, that high sugar level in the blood, is what causes those classic symptoms.
Okay, let's unpack this then. How does that sugar traffic jam actually make someone feel? It seems weird. You'd think loads of sugar means loads of energy, but people often feel tired and hungry, right?
It's a real paradox, isn't it? It boils down to two main things happening physiologically. First, what you mentioned, cellular hunger.
Okay.
Your blood might be full of sugar, yeah, but if it can't get into the cells efficiently, the cells themselves are essentially starving. They're not getting the fuel they need.
So the brain gets a signal saying, need fuel, even though there's plenty technically available.
Well, brain senses this energy deficit inside the cells and sends out a strong signal, eat more. And that's where that constant nagging hunger, the increased appetite comes from.
Wow. Your body's tricking you into eating more when the problem is actually getting the fuel in.
It really is. Okay, so the second big consequence involves your kidneys and fluid balance. When your blood sugar is very high, your kidneys work like crazy to filter out the excess sugar.
They try to get rid of it through urine?
They do. But here's the crucial bit. Sugar is what we call an osmotic agent. It basically acts like a magnet for water.
Ah, so when the sugar leaves in the urine, it doesn't go alone. It drags water out with it.
A lot of water.
Yeah.
Much more water than normal. And this leads directly to one of the other big symptoms. Frequent urination. You're losing a lot of fluid volume.
Okay, that makes sense. Loss of fluid.
Triggers the body's response to replace it. And that's the third major symptom. Excessive thirst. You feel incredibly thirsty because your body is desperately trying to make up for all the water being pulled out by the sugar.
That explains the cycle perfectly. Increased appetite, frequent urination, and excessive thirst, all linked back to that sugar stuck in the bloodstream.
That's the core trio. And our source material points out these three are so characteristic of high blood sugar. Sometimes doctors even use a shorthand, the 3 Ps.
Polyphagia, polydipsia, polyuria, something like that.
Exactly those. Polyphagia for hunger, polydipsia for thirst, and polyuria for urination. You don't need the fancy terms, but recognizing that pattern hunger, thirst, urination all increasing together is a really strong indicator that blood sugar might be too high.
Got it. Very specific signs for high blood sugar now. What about the other side? Hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. You said earlier this one's trickier.
It really is. And just as dangerous, maybe even more immediately dangerous sometimes. The mechanism is quite different. It's not a slow buildup issue. It's more like a sudden energy crisis for the body.
Okay, and can this happen with diabetes too? Or is it separate?
Oh, definitely with diabetes. Sometimes it's caused by taking too much insulin medication, for example. But interestingly, in type 2 diabetes, it can sometimes happen almost as a reaction.
How so? If the body resists insulin in type 2, how could it end up with too little sugar? Seems backward.
It does seem counterintuitive, yeah. But sometimes the body tries so hard to overcome that resistance, it actually overcompensates. It might pump out a huge amount of insulin, trying to force the sugar into the cells.
And sometimes it works too well.
Exactly. If that overcompensation, maybe combined with medication effects or changes in diet or activity, pushes the sugar level down too far, too fast, you crash. You get hypoglycemia.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. You said the symptoms are tricky. Unlike that clear 3 Ps pattern for high sugar, low sugar feels different, more vague.
Very much so. The symptoms are frustratingly nonspecific. And that's because hypoglycemia hits the brain first and hardest.
The brain runs on glucose, right? Almost entirely.
Almost exclusively, yes.
Okay.
So when that glucose level drops suddenly, the brain is immediately starved of its primary fuel. It triggers a massive emergency alarm.
Like a panic button.
Totally. The body releases adrenaline, other stress hormones. That's the fight or flight response kicking in. And that's why the symptoms are things like feeling shaky, suddenly intensely anxious, breaking out in a sweat, maybe feeling dizzy or lightheaded.
So those feelings aren't directly because of low sugar, but because the brain panicked and hit the adrenaline switch.
That's a huge part of it. It's the body's emergency systems going off because the brain's fuel supply is critically low. It's not a slow mechanical issue like the kidneys getting overloaded. It's an immediate system-wide alert.
Which explains why it's so non-specific. I mean, you could feel anxious or sweaty for a dozen reasons.
Exactly. A headache could just be stress. Feeling sweaty could be the room temperature. Feeling shaky could be too much coffee. The source material really stresses this. Because these symptoms are so easily blamed on other things, being tired, stressed, whatever, you can't reliably say, oh, this is low blood sugar, just based on the feeling.
So you need confirmation, like testing your sugar right then.
Yes, or getting medical attention.
Yeah.
You really could just wait it out hoping it'll pass, and you definitely don't get those clear progressive signs like the excessive thirst and urination you see with high sugar. It's much more sudden and often confusing.
Okay, this really underscores the need for a reliable way to measure things then. If daily levels bounce around and low sugar symptoms are easily missed or misread, how do doctors get a clear picture? We need something more stable.
We absolutely do, and thankfully we have it. The key tool for getting that reliable long-term view is a test called the HbA1c test.
HbA1c, right.
This test is really the anchor. It gives us that broader perspective that daily finger prick tests, while useful for immediate management, just can't provide on their own.
So what's fascinating here is, how does it work? It's not just measuring the sugar right now, is it? It's looking back somehow.
Exactly. It's not a snapshot. It's more like a short film of your blood sugar history. The HbA1c test measures your average blood sugar levels over a decent chunk of time.
How does it do that?
Well, it looks at hemoglobin, which is the protein inside your red blood cells that carries oxygen. When glucose is floating around in your blood, some of it naturally sticks to this hemoglobin. Think of it like sugar slowly crystallizing onto the hemoglobin protein over time.
Okay.
The HbA1c test measures what percentage of your hemoglobin has glucose stuck to it. We call that glycated hemoglobin. More sugar in your blood over time means more gets stuck, leading to a higher HbA1c percentage.
And the time window, you said it looks back. How far back?
It effectively gives you an average over the past 2 to 3 months.
2 to 3 months. How does it manage that specific time frame?
And this is the really neat biological part, the aha detail. It's tied directly to the natural lifespan of your red blood cells.
Okay.
Red blood cells live for about 120 days on average, roughly 3 to 4 months.
I see. So because the red blood cells are constantly circulating for about 3 months, picking up sugar along the way, measuring the sugar stuck to them gives you an average picture of that entire period.
You got it. Since those cells have been around for that long, bathed in whatever your blood sugar levels were, the amount of sugar stuck to their hemoglobin gives doctors a really stable, reliable indicator of your average glucose exposure over the preceding months.
It's like a biological average calculator. You can't really gain that test by eating well just the day before, can you?
Not really, no. A single day of good eating won't significantly change an average built up over 3 months. That's why it's considered the gold standard for diagnosing diabetes. And crucially, for monitoring how well treatment, whether it's diet, exercise, or medication, is actually working over time. It cuts through the daily noise.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so what does this all mean for someone listening? We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. I think the key takeaway is understanding that clear difference. Hyperglycemia, high sugar, often gives those very specific warning signs, the 3 Ps of excessive hunger, thirst, and urination. Pretty clear signals, if you know them.
Right. But then hypoglycemia, low sugar, is much sneakier. It causes that sudden panicky feeling, shakiness, anxiety, sweating because the brain's in trouble. But those symptoms are super nonspecific, easy to brush off.
Exactly. And then we have the HbA1c test, which is our reliable historian, looking back over 3 months, giving us the true average picture because of that 120-day lifespan of red blood cells.
So really, just understanding this framework, high versus low, specific versus non-specific symptoms, short-term versus long-term measurement, that's a huge first step, isn't it, towards being more informed about your own metabolic health.
It absolutely is. Knowledge really is power here. Knowing what these different states feel like and knowing how they're properly measured puts you in a much better position.
Okay, let's leave our listeners with something to think about then. Here's a final thought. Given how nonspecific and easy to mistake those low blood sugar symptoms are, feeling tired, anxious, maybe a bit shaky, how should that influence how you think about your own health checks? Does the subtle, tricky nature of hypoglycemia maybe suggest we should be more proactive about screening? Getting checks like the HbA1c done regularly rather than just waiting until we feel obviously unwell or see those classic 3P signs. Something to mull over.